But look, over the last 72 hours, maybe even a little bit more, since Alabama head coach Nick Saban has retired, there have been a lot of players from Alabama that have entered the transfer portal. A lot of players have also entered the NFL draft, which a lot of people are not bringing into account here. Big-time guys like Proctor, Caleb Downs, Trey Amos, Des Ricks, those are just some to name off the very top that have entered the transfer portal and are planning to go somewhere else. Joe, the question and the thought, at least, that I had brought up at least 3 times on the last 3 live shows that we've done, is it time to panic for Alabama? Because I don't think DeBoer will be able to maintain and keep some of these high-level guys. And, Joe, he's not doing that. Now, let me just say one thing in this, too. I have seen a lot of people that either played or cover or love the SEC. And I see people coming out with videos. Should there be some sympathy for Alabama, what they're going through right now?
What?
And I'm like, yeah, dude.
Oh, my God.
Here? Like, what are we talking about here? Welcome to relevance. Welcome to what everybody else in the country deals with. I remember when Florida was going through a transition from Dan Mullen to Billy Napier. I remember when Brian Kelly had 39 scholarship players. I remember when, I'm actually just going to throw this out there, what Mike Elko had when he got there and now has the number 1 class in the transfer portal. The number 1 class. I know that situation's different. He had a little bit of a head start than DeBoer. Okay. I mean, and here's another question. Why isn't Nick stepping in and telling these kids to stay? Why isn't he helping DeBoer? Like that's
we don't know if he hasn't or not, but the problem is here. The problem is that no matter what has happened and what has transpired behind closed doors, has not been enough to entice any of these kids to return.
Right.
There's a lot of layers to this conversation, Blake.
All right, let's go with the first.
Am I surprised that this is happening? No, absolutely not. I'm not surprised. We see this, as you just laid out perfectly, whenever there is a transition of a head coach at any Power 5 program, those rosters are pulled apart for their parts. All of the elite players are going to get reached out to. They're going to get tampered with. They're going to get asked to come and play for their schools. It is just the world that we live in. And even before the transfer portal and NIL were at full effect, it still would happen where guys would look for ways to get out because they don't want to play for a new head coach and risk it impacting their careers. These guys are simply just doing what's best for them and their future. So no, I'm not surprised. Alabama fans should not be upset that these guys are leaving because they didn't sign up to play for Kalen Deboer. Most of these kids probably, if you asked them to pick out Kalen Deboer in a crowd of people, would have no idea who he is until he showed up at Alabama. And then before this national championship run, outside of the national sphere, most people in the college football world weren't really familiar with Kalen Deboer until he did what he did this year. So I'm not surprised. They're merely trying to do what's best for them. They don't want to risk sticking around because they wanted to play for Saban. They didn't show up to play for Kalen Deboer. So no, I'm not surprised. But to your question on if it's time to panic, it is troubling that these kids are leaving. It is extremely troubling, and I would worry on how that is going to negatively impact the product on the field. But there still is time after the spring ball transfer portal window opens for them to go and grab some guys and to clear and stop some of the bleeding. It's not a good solution, but it's on the table.
There's not guys out there like that in the spring portal.
Oh, I'm not saying that they're going to find a Caleb Downs, but they can at least find some football players that can fill some of the holes that are now going to be opened up.
Joe, they might not go 9-3. They are losing too much. Way too much. It is time to panic from this point of view. You ready? They are coming off the most historic dynasty run of all time. This is like Brady leaving New England. It might even be a little bit bigger because, it's Nick and he's the head coach. He's bringing all those players in. It is time to panic. Joe, are you 1,000% sure right now, as we sit here today on January the 17th, 2024, the year of our Lord, that Alabama wins more than 9 games? Yes or no? Because there's no way that, Joe, mainly due to the fact of the system that they run offensively, you don't have the quarterback that you could bring in, at least at the current moment, that will get you to that place. You have guys leaving rapidly, okay, that would be not only starters, not only contributors. Joe, we're talking about all SEC, all American potential players. Like, it is time to panic. This is not something that you can just sit here and tell me that, oh, no, we're Alabama, we'll be fine. No, that's not true. They did not have a plan on keeping these dudes or doing anything to help try to retain them. None of them.
Well, okay.
I know what some of these kids are asking right now in the portal. Alabama is not matching. There's money figures to this. They are not matching.
Well, that was what I brought up last show, that it's not commonly understood that the NIL game at Alabama is actually not the best. They don't have the most amount of money. They don't spend the most amount of money. They were getting kids to come on a discount because they wanted to play for Nick Saban. So now everything is really starting to crumble because they never thought that there was this future without Nick Saban. I understand what you're saying. I completely agree with the take that you have of losing all these guys. It absolutely is going to impact the product on the field, and they're not going to be back in the same conversation where they had one loss last year and win the SEC championship game. There are other better rosters now that all these guys are leaving that are going to beat them. And yes, 9-8 wins is on the table. I'm not going to go as far as to commit to a number yet because I made that mistake last offseason and it came back to bite me in the ass, and I don't want to go down that road again.
I told you not to do it. I begged you not to do it, by the way.
But if we recall, Blake, that I said when this Kalen Deboer hire went through, my biggest thing that I said for Alabama fans is to temper your expectations in year one with Kalen Deboer, because there was going to be transitional fallout for a guy in his first year as the head coach. It is the natural order of things.
This amount of fallout, though? This is significant. Like, were you?
How many times have we seen this though for schools? How many scholarship players did LSU have when Brian Kelly took over?
39. But here's the problem with that. Number one, Ed Orgeron had just gone 500 in back-to-back years. Okay, he was a toxic chaos all around the place. Nick is leaving that program in a stratosphere that Ed Orgeron only touched once in 2019. Like that, it's not the same.
But I would argue though that this is the result of having such a huge high for Alabama for as long as it did, if that makes sense. Like but
LSU
the fallout's going to be greater for Alabama, because the minute that this run is over and that everyone was attracted and drawn to Nick Saban, all those kids are going to dip out. I don't know if that really makes total sense.
No,
on what
not
I'm
really.
To say here.
Not really, because I think it's apples and oranges when you compare to it. I agree with you that they're going to have to temper their expectations. I don't think you can. I think you're going to just have to have fun next year. And
dude, you can't say that to Alabama fans. You guys should just have fun with it, man. You guys, what, are you nuts?
Let me ask you a hypothetical question as it sits today. Now you can change this. Okay. Are you 1,000% sure that when Georgia comes to town that they can win that game? Yes or no?
No, they're going to lose.
Are you 1,000%? Are you 1,000% for sure that Alabama could go into Baton Rouge and win? Are you 1,000%
they're not
sure
going to beat them
that they can beat Oklahoma? Are you 1,000% for sure that they can beat everybody that's on their schedule? My point is, okay, it's one thing that Kalen Deboer is a really good coach. We've seen him be a really good coach on the field. That's not really a debate that you and I have. The debate that you and I are having is that they just don't have the dudes. Literally. Joe, they're too deep is going to be the freshman guys that are coming in. Now, can they bring in other guys from the portal in the spring? Yeah. We change our thoughts on what they're doing? Sure. But Joe, that hasn't happened yet. Okay, so when I look at Alabama and I look at what is going on, there's not another Caleb. Joe, Caleb Downs might be the best player in college football.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about him in a second. But yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so with that being said alone, you can't lose players like that and think that it's not just the high profile guys that are leaving. You have guys like Des Ricks, who was a 5-star. You have guys like Trey Amos, who would have started for you. You're losing too many pieces. Oh, and by the way, Joe, they're losing a lot of pieces to the NFL.
My point is, and that's also, by the way, that's a very good point.
We talked about Isaiah Bond. Like, we didn't even talk about the weapons.
Yeah.
So they already had problems at wide receiver. So here's another thought and question to you. Okay, you're talking about a team offensively that had issues out wide and at the boundary. Okay, you lost your best weapon. You're going to an air raid offense with Jalen Milroe.
Well, yeah, again, we don't totally know. I mean, I actually wouldn't be shocked if Milroe doesn't end up deciding to enter the portal because of them trying to look for a different guy.
Unless you bring in Will Rogers, you're potentially going to a redshirt freshman, Ty Simpson, or a true freshman. Take your pick.
Okay, so just to reiterate what I'm trying to say here, though, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I completely agree that the product that we see with all these guys entering in 2024 is not going to be up to par with the team that just went to the college football playoff, which was already one of the weaker, younger teams that Nick Saban has ever coached. Look, I'm not going to say that we're going to be able to be in that college football playoff conversation. It's just not going to happen with all these guys that are leaving, especially one of the best defensive backs in college football that's a future top 10 pick and one of the best freshman offensive linemen. It is going to be impossible to find guys to step right in and replace them because they're, frankly, irreplaceable players. They are that good of players. But at the end of the day, because I'm not surprised by this, this is just how things work with new coaching staffs. Guys are going to leave, and because it's Nick Saban, it's going to be tenfold because these players are going to feel disenfranchised by the fact that Nick Saban told them he was going to be there for however long and that they were going to get coached for most of their careers, and they want to go somewhere else, and they're probably going to go to the schools that were second on their list when they made their college decision a few years ago. I think the biggest piece here is that there's recoverability, which is why I don't want to panic. I'm going to start to worry a shit ton, but I'm not going to panic because there's recoverability in the spring to at least mitigate this. And then if Kalen Deboer, here's when I'll actually panic, Blake. If the first recruiting class, the 2025 class, does not finish in the top 10, and when you're a brand like Alabama,
they're going to.
That's when I'm.
But
that's when I'm fucking panicking.
But they can't finish in the top 10.
That's when I'm going to start panicking. I'm going to at least give them the benefit of the doubt.
5, or they're in trouble. All right. I will say this. Jabbar Muhammad, the corner from Washington, is going to take visits to Texas and Alabama. Adding a piece like that would be really massive for Kalen Deboer, right? Like, that's a good massive, corner. Very good corner. He had that great PBU on Adonai Mitchell in the end zone to win the football game against Texas. But they're losing too many pieces, buddy. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily recoverable to where they were this past year.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.